Hi people, it's Archivist here, and today we're going to be going through the top 5 best-selling home game consoles of all time. The first console on this list is Sony's PlayStation 3, which released in 2006 and sold over 83.8 million units. Very impressive. Now, when the PlayStation 3 first came out, it had its fair share of issues. It was extremely expensive, multi-platform games tended to be stronger on the Xbox 360, and the controller lacked rumble. If anyone remembers originally, when they came out with the 6-axis controller, Sony didn't think it was worth putting rumble into the controller. They eventually did with the DualShock 3, but very strange decision there. And at first, people just didn't really go to the PlayStation 3, and it really, a lot of the time, came down to price. Yes, it had free online, yes, it had an inbuilt Blu-ray player, but price was a real issue. But over time, the price went down, that was appealing. Then you had some really great exclusives in the form of Uncharted 2, Metal Gear Solid 4, God of War 3, one of my absolute favourite games of all time. It just became a far more appealing console over time, and I think really, if only for the redemption this console went through, it absolutely does deserve to be on this list. And I'll just give a little story here. Funnily enough, what got me into the console you would never guess. Some people went to the PlayStation 3 because their friends were online with it, they wanted to play Uncharted, maybe Killzone. Not me, no. I wanted to play a game called Eye of Judgment, and this was a game where you had these cards and you put them under the eye toy, and then a monster would actually come out of them. I was really big into Yu-Gi-Oh at the time, and it just seemed like the most amazing thing in the world to have a game where you saw monsters come out of monster cards. Now we come to the Xbox 360, which released in 2005 and sold 84 million units, very close to the PlayStation 3 sales, which ultimately is a testament to just how equal the two consoles were. When I think about what was so special about the Xbox 360, I think of, well, Halo, the amazing controller, Xbox Live, which although you had to pay for, was very good. And sadly, I can't get the Red Ring of Death out of my mind. Now, my original Xbox 360 Elite did die on me. I remember hearing about the Red Rings for a long time. I didn't know if it was going to happen to me. I didn't know if it was greatly exaggerated. But after some time, my 360 died. And I was very upset, but I did expect it, and we did go out and get another one. Because the thing about the 360 was, it felt like the essential console of the 7th generation, because it was just so good with multi-platform releases. When a game like Call of Duty or Grand Theft Auto would come out, I didn't even consider, do I get it on the Wii? Do I get it on the PlayStation 3? I thought, yeah, you know, I get it on the 360. That's the console you get games on, because it was just so good for multi-platform releases. It was the de facto essential console of the 7th generation, and I really liked it, and I will remember it fondly, apart from the fact that my first one broke. Coming in at number 3 is the Nintendo Wii, which came out in 2006 and sold 101.52 million units, and this is Nintendo's best-selling home console. I think we all know why this particular console sold so well. The Nintendo Wii brought in a massive innovation in the form of motion controls that hadn't been done before. It started this complete craze, and it appealed to not only normal gamers who wanted something new, but also people who had never considered playing games before. You had games that appealed to the hardcore, like Mario Galaxy and Super Smash Bros. Brawl, but you also had games like Wii Sport that really appealed to people who had never even considered playing games before, people like maybe your grandparents. Evidently, Nintendo achieved enormous success by going for this strategy of appealing to the casual market, but the console was not without weakness. So first and foremost, in my opinion, this was a standard definition console. Whereas the 360 and the PlayStation 3 were touted as having amazing HD visuals, the Wii lagged behind, very much in the era of the 6th generation consoles, to be honest. It did not look much better. And also, the online integration wasn't that great. It was there, but it wasn't on the same level as Xbox Live or PSN. I can't say I was a massive fan of the Nintendo Wii, but I do appreciate what it did, and I definitely like the fact it was different. Now we come to Sony's first home console, the PlayStation 1, or just PlayStation. It released in 1994 in Japan and 1995 in Europe and America. It sold a very impressive 102.49 million units. I find that particularly impressive considering that this was the first of its line. It was the first PlayStation, it didn't have any kind of reputation behind it. It just came out, had a solid marketing campaign and did very, very well. I mean, all of my friends at the time had a PlayStation. I was actually the only one not to own one, I have to admit. Of all the consoles on this list, I did not own an original PlayStation. I really wanted one, but I couldn't get one. I think one of the biggest advantages of the PlayStation 1 over its rival, the N64, was the fact that it used CDs instead of cartridges. And what this meant was more data could be used in games, so you had better high-resolution textures, longer games in general, cutscenes, things like that. You could argue that the original PlayStation served as the template for modern-day gaming controllers. So the first controller that came out for the original PlayStation was pretty much what you'd expect now, but minus the analog sticks. And then you had the DualShock, which came out and had both analog sticks. And of course there have been a few differences, but when you look at the DualShock 4 and the DualShock 1, they're very similar because the design is just so good. In at number 1, by quite a large margin, is Sony's PlayStation 2, released in 2000, which sold over 155 million units, which is crazy, that's incredible. Now, if you ask me, the reason the PlayStation 2 did so well, apart from just being a very good console in general, it was because it was working off the reputation of the previous PlayStation, which did so well on its own, so people really enjoyed the original PlayStation and thought, well, it's only natural we get the PlayStation 2, that's going to be a lot better. Interesting thing to consider, the PlayStation 2, when compared to the original Xbox and GameCube, was actually the weakest console power-wise, and yet it massively outsold them. It had a lot of games going for it, it had a very good DualShock controller, it was an extremely solid machine. I do have to admit to a little bit of sentimental love when it comes to the PlayStation 2, as it was my very first home console. So when I first plugged it in, set it up, and started playing, of all games, Simpsons Road Rage, I was in my element. This was when I was sucked in. This is when I think I truly became a gaming enthusiast or gamer. Unfortunately, my very first PlayStation 2, because I owned two, broke down. The optical drive didn't work, and when we took it for repair, the guy advised us just to buy a new one because it just makes more sense on the whole. And we got the slimline model. And I have to say, the slim PlayStation 2 is one of the coolest looking consoles I've ever seen. Up until this day, I haven't seen a home console that looks quite as cool as the slim PlayStation 2. Have a look at it if you haven't seen it already, it's a very snazzy looking device. These were the top 5 best-selling home game consoles of all time. A question I just want to ask at the end here is, was there a console that you've played on, maybe the GameCube, the original Xbox, the Nintendo 64, the Sega Genesis, that you think deserves to be in the top 5, that deserved to sell far more than it actually did? For instance, for me, the GameCube deserved to sell way more than it actually did. I thought it was a superb console with some really great games, and I think it's a shame that it didn't actually sell that well. If you enjoyed this video, please do rate, comment and subscribe. I don't think I say enough just how much I appreciate that, and if you do ever rate, comment and subscribe on any other videos, do let it be known that I really do appreciate it. Thank you very much. As always people, thanks very much for watching and see you next time.